So, when do you think you first started thinking about directing yourself? Again, we've noted how many amazing and varied directors you've worked with, um, and why Coriolanus. I know you'd played the part on the stage, but this is very different. This is you end up doing in 2011 a contemporary set uh, taking place in Belgrade version of this of this play. How did this? How and why?
Well, to go back to, I think, what I mentioned earlier was the producer, Simon Channing Williams, who gave me a kind of confidence to believe that I might be able to direct. And I had been on stage with this very, very difficult Shakespeare play with a very a central protagonist who is, I think, on purpose meant to be very confrontational to the audience. He has a contempt for the people. He's a brave soldier, and he saves his city, but he has a contempt for the ordinary people. He's a sort of kind of extreme martial samurai figure. There have been productions of the play which have made him fascist, which I think is a bit simplistic, but he's definitely a hardcore military man. And I think Shakespeare is provoking the audience about their allegiances and about politics and sense of nationhood. And it seemed to me that the things in the play are always relevant they're always very current in the way in which our world is so uncertain, with wars and unhappy populations protesting and rebelling against dictatorships. Authoritarian governments is what I meant to say. So I had been on stage with this play. I felt it was unfinished business. I felt the production I was in was good, but I felt I hadn't realized something in the part. And also being on stage in it, I had this growing sense that it could be a film, but modern, but set today. And so I set about trying to make it. But the pivotal person, I should mention, who really put the first stone down was the screenwriter John Logan. And I pitched it to John with images, and he said, "I'll write this on spec." So without John Logan, there would be no film of Coriolanus, because his screenplay was extraordinary. He edited out a lot, which you need to do with this play. It's full of quite difficult language, and had incredibly vivid descriptions of what was going on. So people picked it up, I think, nervously, thinking, "Well, I understand all this Shakespeare," and they found it was a page turner. It was difficult to finance. I wanted to stay true to Shakespeare's language. I do think if I was to make it again, I might be a bit more braver about changing the language. But I guess, as you've heard of my exposure to Shakespeare when I was young, I have a sort of loyalty to, or a kind of belief in the language. But actually, I have to recognize sometimes it's just hard for a modern audience. But the story is not hard, and the characters are not hard. And I think even though the film might be challenging in terms of understanding all the dialogue, I do think the story is clear. But the Barry Ackroyd connection, because Scott mentioned Barry Ackroyd, the cinematographer in Hurt Locker, he was my cinematographer. So he was there were a number of key people. I can't mention everyone. I'd like to, because it was very meaningful to me to be able to make this film. But of course, the first person a director has to have, literally, to be almost your arm, your second skin, your soulmate is your cinematographer. And that was Barry. And I could see immediately how it was wonderful to see Barry work. He comes from documentaries. One of the things he said to me was, in documentary, you don't have a second chance. You have to go into any given situation or location or room, and you have to find out where is the optimum place for my camera to get what might happen in front of me. And that was his instinct. And I quickly saw that I didn't have to worry. He was there. And it was intense, and I had the wonderful Vanessa Redgrave playing my mother, and that's a key relationship in the film. But then we made it in Belgrade in 2010.
That's great. Now, for a kid who apparently grew up quite a James Bond enthusiast, um, and who I believe at one point spoke with Cubby Broccoli about perhaps playing James Bond. This was, I guess, in the 90s. How did it feel to succeed Dame Judi Dench as M for the first time in Skyfall? And then there was Spectre and No Time to Die thereafter. But that's kind of about as special a thing as it gets for an Englishman, no?
Well, I loved doing the Bond films. I think I adored working with Daniel Craig, who I think is phenomenal as Bond, phenomenal actor and man. I got to act with Judi Dench in the first one. She's extraordinary, Judi Dench. She's so extraordinary you can't really erase her as M. So in all the subsequent films, there's always a picture of Judy or a recording of Judy. So as the new M, I was always a bit like, Judi Dench is still here. Yeah, no, it was clearly the Bond franchise is an institution, and Sam Mendes, who directed the first two, brought his wonderful vision and confidence. And I think with those two films of Sam's with Daniel, I think they feel like quite a major upgrade in the franchise at that time.
Absolutely. And so we will take a look now at Rafe's directed version and starring of Coriolanus as well as Skyfall.